Let's get started. Welcome everyone to Findem Live. We're here to share our innovations and just stories on how to better plan, find, and manage talent. If this is your first time learning about Findem, our talent data cloud is the only talent acquisition and management solution with an AI-first approach powered by 3D data to transform the way you find talent, reduce technology costs by consolidating disconnected tools, and automate routine tasks with AI. And so my name is Benton. I lead product marketing here at Findem, as well as host this monthly Findem Live series. Please ask questions in the chat, give an emoji reaction, whatever you like to keep the chat lively. We'd love to answer any questions. And so kind of today at a high level for Findem, we offer 5 core products. And today we are diving specifically into our talent sourcing product. I'm joined by 3 incredible leaders in the space. We have Travis and Gina from Boulevard, one of our amazing customers, and Annie from Findem. Welcome, welcome. Let's do a quick introduction before we dive into our main topic. Let's start with Travis, maybe then Gina, and then Annie.
Hello. So as Benton said, I'm the VP of Talent Acquisition at Boulevard. Previous to Boulevard, I started and built the tech recruiting function at Zoom during the Zoom boom. So 2020, 2021, and part of 2022. And yes, it was absolutely insane. And then previous to that, I've led tech recruiting at a number of different startups.
Excellent. I'm Gina. I am one of our lead business recruiters here at Boulevard 2, working directly with Travis. I'm based in Denver, Colorado. Boulevard's my second startup I've had the pleasure of recruiting for, and I have a background in agency recruiting, in-house recruiting, all things from the tech side to now focusing on the go-to-market side.
Cool. And I'm Annie. I'm the head of product at Findem. Been with the company since almost 4 years now. So seen us coming from, very small to what you see here today. And we're excited to give you a little peek of Findem today.
Awesome. Now that the audience knows who we are, let's dive into why we're here today. It's all about collaboration with hiring managers. I think for a lot of talent teams, I often hear it's difficult to pinpoint exact hiring requirements. There's a lot of back and forth to be able to build a high quality pipeline. And so today, let's dive into how, Travis and Gina, you've built trusted partnerships with your hiring managers. So I guess I'll kick it off with Travis. I think as a TA leader, maybe give some context for the audience. What is Boulevard, and also as a TA leader, what are your main priorities and challenges that you're looking to solve this year?
Yeah, so Boulevard is a platform for the self-care space. So think like salons, med spas, etc. And it does everything. Their clients, their customers can interact to schedule all the way through payment processing. So it's a full vertically solutioned offering. For us, in terms of TA and some of our focus and the things that we're really thinking about, if I had to really kind of like bucket it, it's efficiency and experience. So I think with the acceleration of technology, especially AI, which obviously is a hot topic, you can't really escape it at the moment. And then when you think about capital and the availability of capital, and you think about how companies have grown in the startup space previous to, I'd say the last 12 months, there was a lot of inefficiency kind of baked into it, right? Like TA teams were ballooned. For instance, for Zoom, we went from 0 to 50 tech recruiters in the span of like 6 months. And so that was like the typical play is okay, we need to hire more people. We need to hire more recruiters to hire more people. And I think that is not necessarily in vogue anymore. I think the reality is like TA has kind of lagged in the technology offerings that have been available to us. And as a result, it's been like pretty manual. And so I think there's a big push into efficiency. And then the second piece is the experience piece. So I think it's like we all talk about being more proactive in our recruiting efforts and how we do that. I think technology plays a really important role to that. But when I think about the experience piece, it's how you differentiate as an employer of choice. Like if you break it all down, the reality is like most companies and most businesses are very similar in a lot of different ways. Like there's nuance and there's culture, and don't get me wrong, things are very different. You can have totally different experiences at different companies, but at the end of the day, like we're doing very similar work. And so to me, when I think about how you can differentiate as an employer throughout the talent acquisition lifecycle, it's really like how do you create just this stellar experience where people feel valued, they feel special, they feel wanted? How do you create that emotional bond in a really truncated amount of time? So I'm thinking a lot about like nurturing and staying in touch with talent over time, and being able to introduce them to hiring managers for proactive conversations, and just building a meaningful pipeline with people that we're connected with in a far more, like deep, intimate way versus the typical TA transactional, like we have a job, you're now open and I want to talk to you. When in reality, 80% of our roles, we know what we're going to be hiring, 6 months from now. So why not start building those relationships now? So those are the big things I'm thinking about.
Yeah, that's awesome. So in terms of, I guess, where Findem played a role in elevating that efficiency experience, what did that look like?
Yeah. I mean, so there are a number of things. One, like obviously the Findem search functionality is incredible. You get a more holistic picture of that person's profile. I mean, LinkedIn has been around for ages. And we know that the level of engagement and interaction from a recruiting perspective on LinkedIn has sort of steadily been on the decline. And I don't think LinkedIn has done a lot on the innovation side of things. Not to take anything away from them. LinkedIn's a great company, great product. But the richness that you get in the profile views for Findem is so much more meaningful. And just to give a couple examples, one is being able to actually look at staging for candidates. So you can tell not only what company did that person work for, but you can tell during the period of time that they were an employee there, what stage were they? How much did they grow in that timeline? So you just get far deeper insight into what the person has experience with, which is huge. The second component, which obviously is the topic of this, is we've been able to intimately involve our hiring managers. And I actually think that's a bit more of the future of recruiting, is getting hiring managers and hiring leaders more and more involved further up the funnel in creating connection. Because we all know, like, who you work for, your boss is the number one driver of what companies you join and when you decide to leave. So creating those relationships and being able to introduce those, those parties together, prospects, candidates, and hiring managers, it's really huge. So for us, and obviously we're going to get into this, we've been able to build a deeper connection with our hiring managers and our hiring leaders through the tooling that Findem offers to not only align on the type of profile and the type of candidate and the type of individual that we want now for something transactional, but also building that profile for the future so that we can start building out those communities and actually staying in touch with folks.
That's awesome. I guess from a product management perspective, like Annie, how when we're looking at building collaborative workflows, what kind of insights have you seen from other customers just thinking about collaboration?
Yeah, great question, Benson. So we do get a lot of feedback around collaboration, and it's part of the reason we're so interested in this topic, right? How can I share what I'm seeing in Findem with my coworkers and my hiring managers? How might we translate some of the magic that I'm seeing inside of the system, like Travis was mentioning, and share that outside of the system? And we built some tools like, talent insight reports to help analyze talent pools with your hiring manager. And when it comes to candidates, I think generally everyone agrees and is aligned with that excuse me, fast and early feedback cycles are desirable because they have the power to calibrate and course correct and avoid unnecessary delays in the hiring process. And the challenge for us from a product side is, how do we do this asynchronously, as hiring managers, who have approved these requisitions tend to have a lot on their plate. With that, I'd love to switch over to Gina and ask, what friction points were there when you worked with hiring managers prior to using Findem?
Yeah, just as you mentioned too, the feedback loops, that was a difficult, just an area of perfection, because it was tough not having really one-stop shop where everything could be accessible, where you could do, gather the profiles, do the ratings, and also do outreach all in one spot. Of course, we brought up LinkedIn already too. Great resource, but you had to add extra tools on top of LinkedIn. So if we wanted to find LinkedIn profiles, then we have to calibrate via a Google Sheet and type notes there. And so it's just hard to keep track of everything. So it's really nice having everything in one spot, makes things much more streamlined and quicker. So those feedback loops are more accessible and just easier to really shorten. So on top of that too, as Travis was saying, when it comes to kicking off a search, and if it's a really niche role, whether it's niche role or not, actually, we'll always ask our hiring managers, what companies should we target? What type of companies, what stage, things like that. And we didn't really have enough data points on those companies until now using Findem. We can see the stage of the company, how they grew within the organization, things like that. So no more friction there, thanks to Findem.
Yeah, and I mean the dimensions that we can gain through Findem, like a lot of times those are the dimensions that actually contribute to decisions on moving candidates forward or hiring, or some of these more like staging level experience things, especially for a growing startup. Not only that, it's just so much more efficient. So like a profile on LinkedIn, which is pretty one-dimensional, may look really good, but you have to have a conversation to get that deeper insight. With Findem, you have more of that insight up front, which means you can just calibrate faster and have fewer conversations. And then the conversations you have are just much higher quality, which is huge when you're thinking about, hiring multiple positions at any given time.
Awesome. Okay, well, Gina, let's get our hands dirty. Let's dive in and see how you do it today in Findem.
Excellent. Great. Can you see my screen? Here.
Yep.
Perfect. So this director of payment ops search was a tough one, to say the least. We worked on it on and off for over a year at different levels. And so we're using previous searching tools and then stumbling across Findem. The very first, I'll just add a couple of backstories here. The very first batch of candidates we had for the hiring team, one of our VPs even said this is the greatest batch of candidates I've seen for a role this quick. So just the turnaround time right off the bat just showed how efficient the platform is. And then the director of payment ops, we just closed this role about 2 weeks ago officially, thanks to Findem too. So we're super excited about that. And what really worked for us was the overall rating scale with our hiring managers. So within the short list of this director of payment ops project, best way we really filter it when sending profiles to the hiring manager to review, we'd go over to not assigned to a campaign as an example, and see here, there's the 5 stars, and we'd have hiring managers rate them 1 through 5. Anyone who got a 4 or a 5, we reached out to automatically. And then also it was great to see, the comments, things like that, that the hiring manager could leave on the profile. So that was huge. And then, so say these were all 5 stars, and then you can add those filters here based on the ratings, and then click reach out, and it just added them to the campaign. Super, super easy. That process flow has worked really well for us.
Awesome. And I'm curious if you leverage deeper collaboration on the campaign side, say sending on behalf of the hiring manager.
So we've done that a ton. Our CFO is huge on that, big proponent for those. So we do on behalf of our VP at first, who's the direct hiring manager for the role. And then over time, we're like, you know what, let's actually have our CFO do the first outreach, which really, I think that helps quite a bit. And even going on top of that, we'd want to make sure it sounded really human and sounded actually like the person, as Travis said, that they'd be working for. So we'd have our CFO and the VP actually write out the messaging, and then we'd add it into Findem, and then we'd send it on behalf of them. And it worked super well. So it was their voice, and then in their inbox, they could, add us to it so we could see their responses and everything. And that worked really well. And that's why we got this director of payment ops. Our CFO reached out.
I mean,
And
I forget the exact number, but I think it's
Yeah.
like when we start sending on behalf of the leaders in the organization, it's like a 2 or 3x lift on response rates. Like it's deeply meaningful to have leaders reach out. And of course, it's no lift for them. We can draft the messages, the language, etc. But every once in a while, we're fortunate we have a leader who wants to actually get in there and write some things themselves, and we encourage that because it's super, super helpful.
Now, whenever we have a role open to, our CFO is like, "Are you guys using on behalf of campaigns?" The whole team. So he wants to make sure all our managers are aware of it, since it works so well.
Awesome. And then if we jump back to feedback, what's your sort of general pattern for like, how many candidates you ask for, for hiring managers to provide feedback? How do you track and follow up with that feedback loop?
What we found to work so far is typically once there's around 20 or so profiles in there, then our sourcers, so Dina, who are with very closely, she'll just via Slack let the hiring manager know that, hey, there's 20 profiles in Findem. Feel free to take a look when you have a minute, and trying to establish 24-hour SLAs there. And especially with how easy it is, just walking them through the platform off the bat, just doing like a screen share, showing them how easy it is to do the rating scale if need be. Then typically, within 24 hours, we'll get feedback, ideally.
With tougher managers, we always have weekly syncs, and we just pull it up and say, like, agenda item number 1 is we're going through these 20 profiles together. Let's go.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious how their feedback then affects your search or your sort of outbound strategy.
Yeah, it's huge being able to filter off the profiles that are 4s and 5s to be able to see, what they like and don't like. And even when they do rate the people 1 or 2, especially, it's nice to see what we should avoid when moving forward. So that has worked super well. And it really allows you to narrow in on your search, especially a role like this, when the people that are shortlisted, 135 was such a niche role that even 135 is kind of a stretch for humans that even exist with this background.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks so much for showing us that, Gina.
Yeah.
And so for Boulevard, just what's next in your journey with Findem?
Whatever Annie comes up with. No, I mean, we're super excited. I didn't share much, but so Hari, CEO of Findem, he and I were introduced, and we spent a little bit of time at a conference over breakfast. And what really struck me, and this was before I was a buyer, by the way, this was pre-Boulevard. And what really struck me is just his understanding of the problem in TA, and his engagement with trying to solve it and think about things differently and push the whole space forward. So as I think about our continued relationship with Findem, it really does start hinging on this ability to build talent communities, nurture and engage those talent communities, have an understanding of who's really attracted to our brand as an employer. Like, if you think about this, like, we can find anybody on the planet at this point. And what we really need to do is build lists and pipeline of people who are deeply engaged in Boulevard. Like, I want to get to the point where our communities are comprised of people who are listing Boulevard as one of their top 3 to 5 employers that they would want to work for sometime in their career, in their future. And with the dimensionality of what we can search, with the ability to build out these communities and campaign them, with hopefully some future iterations of the AI, future iterations of workflows, like, we're going to be in a situation where I don't think we're going to need to worry about time to fill, because we're going to know the people in our pipelines in advance of need, well in advance of need. I think our time to fill is going to get to time to interview. And I also think, like, interviewing isn't going to need to be 3 weeks long either, with multiple stages, because again, we have so much more information about the people that we're interacting with. So I really see a future where we just push more and more effort up the funnel, and we're front loading the process a lot more to make the active part of the funnel like just so much quicker and so much higher quality. So for me, like Findem is really on the forefront of doing this work. And I honestly think like Hari gets it. And when you have a CEO who is that engaged, that motivated, is deeply understanding the problem, you have a good shot that the company's probably going to follow in those footsteps. So I'm excited about the future.
That's awesome. That's incredible insight. I think like let's double click into that like dimensionality, like the attributes that we provide in the search criteria. There's a chat and there's a question in the chat where you mentioned that there are only like so few people with the exact qualifications for that director of payment ops role. How did Findem make you confident that you found them all, and how is it different from other tools?
The first thing that comes to mind for me personally is the company list you can add in the search criteria. That was huge. So we need this person to come from a PayFac, so payment facilitator company. And we had a large list of those, but ones that we actually wanted to target, kind of shorten that list internally for us. And we could load that list into Findem. So we could just click that and make sure that anyone who didn't work at those companies wouldn't even pop up in the list. So that helped a ton.
Mm-hmm. And there are custom, like you can build out custom lists too. So you can, and that's like the other piece is it's the Findem magic has a ton of dimensions. Like I can't even name all of them. But you can start building out these custom lists. So for this niche position, we knew it was fintech. We knew there was a subset of companies that were, creating the experience that a candidate would need in this space. So we were actually able to just, compile a company target list for some of these things. And then with some of the, rating and ranking and so on, and the shortlist ability, we were able to prioritize that list. So even though we may have been going after like 4 and 5s initially, after some conversations, we may have found like, oh, company A lacks this, and this. But we've had a conversation with this other person where, we know that this company is actually leaning into this experience or this technology or whatever, a little bit more deeply. So the ability to customize is also really cool.
Yeah, our data research team gets like a lot of requests on like custom attributes, custom lists, and I think it just makes the search experience so much easier for our users. I believe there was another question in the chat from Phil, and he's about to implement Findem, and he's curious about just overall adoption. Like how'd you get the users in? How'd you get hiring managers, anyone just into the platform and happy to use it? What was that experience like?
Yeah, I know Phil was my boss at Zoom, by the way, so I get to. So there were a couple things. One, we actually did an internal sort of campaign and excitement sort of launch around this, which was meaningful and helpful. We did a lot of one-on-one sort of training in meetings with hiring managers and spending a lot of time with them, very high touch. But I think the ultimate thing that we did is I drastically reduced our LinkedIn spend and our seats. So it was a bit of a forcing function. I just had a lot of confidence in what Findem could do. LinkedIn was costing us a fortune. And so, to help offset and put us in a more efficient path, we just cut our relationship with LinkedIn and transitioned to Findem. So in a lot of ways, there wasn't a choice. It's kind of like taking the binky away from a baby when they don't need it anymore. It's like, yeah, it's kind of hard and it's something you're used to, but guess what? You're ready for this next step.
Did they cry?
I don't think they cry. Well, I will say my CEO, one of his coping mechanisms is to, like shop for talent on LinkedIn. And so when I cut the seats, he was a little bit disappointed, but then I gave him a Findem seat, and so he was happy again. So it was good.
Mm-hmm.
No tears were shed that I know of either.
Awesome. And then another one was, is this specific to the hiring managers internally, or do third-party recruiters also use Findem for you guys?
We don't have any third-party recruiters. We are internal only. We've been very successful. Nothing against third parties, but we've been in a good place and we've got a strong team, so we've been able to handle what we have.
And I'll just say generically, like if a Findem customer wants to, add a third party recruiter that's working on their behalf, they could get the seat before them. But it's basically org based, customer based, and seat based.
Cool. We have a couple minutes left. I think just the very last question for both Gina and Travis, like for someone in the audience looking at technology, looking at kind of increasing the efficiency of their overall team and building a better experience for both the candidates and recruiters, what are like your last minute like tips and tricks for people on the hunt for a new tool?
Good question.
It is a good question.
I mean, I think to me it would be like I'm always looking for who is thinking about things differently and who is thinking about what's next. So much of recruiting and honestly business in general, like you hear this like best practices term, those are just recycled. That just means, we discovered a way that works. And so we're going to keep doing it that way. Mm-hmm. To me, I think there's a real opportunity to evaluate your own individual needs, start from what is ideal, what is optimized, and work backwards to find what's available for that. I love Findem. I have all the belief in the world that Findem is going to continue to innovate at a high level in this space. It still doesn't have everything, but it was the closest thing. And philosophically, there's so much alignment that the level of confidence that I have in terms of just like where we're taking TA more broadly, not just a great product that is better than what's on the market, but thinking about how do we push talent acquisition forward as a function, make it more strategic, make it more efficient, frankly, make it like more fun and allow us to lean into things a little bit more that I think are more important. Again, getting back to the experience piece. If you're shopping for a tool, I would challenge you to think about what's next and not just like, what has somebody else done? Let me see if I can copy it. Like really think about how you can push the practice forward, because we need to.
Yeah, tool like this where you can be really creative with your search too, and kind of like ATS, in my opinion, there's no perfect ATS out there. Sometimes you wish you could like join different pieces of your ATS and make one perfect one, like your past experiences you worked with applicant tracking systems. But one that you can really, if you have the ability to really be that one-stop shop where you don't have to use a million tools to have the feedback loop, you don't take that much longer. So that's been great. That's something I'd recommend.
Awesome. Cool. So as we come to a close, we want to know if this is helpful for the audience. If you would like to hear from someone on our team, please take a second to answer the poll. And it's, would you be interested in a demo of just our full overall platform? And with that, thank you, Gina and Travis and Annie, just for talking about how you guys are building better relationships with your hiring managers and being able to elevate the efficiency of your overall team and having a better experience for both recruiters and candidates. So thank you for the webinar.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was awesome.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Ben.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.